Would I love to see the brand still around? No, because it had departed so much. YouTube was a place where you found cat videos and dudes getting hit in the nuts. Like that's what YouTube was when we started. ScrewAttack was not a get rich thing. It was strictly done out of passion, which I think is why it resonated with so many people. The people signing off on this, they don't know your brand. When you have an audience, when you have a brand, you have an intimate relationship with them. They have an intimate relationship with you. So having to get sign-offs from people who have no idea anything about your brand is just infuriating. For the 3 years I spent with RoosterTeeth were the worst 3 years of my life professionally. To say I'm not successful, I mean, with all due respect, go off.
Hello and welcome to CULTURESCAPE, the show that interviews the geek creators and influencers who built nerd culture. He is none other than Craig Skidimus, better known as Stuttering Craig, the creator of the classic video games show ScrewAttack, a founder and pioneer of video game content online. From 2006 to 2016, ScrewAttack entertained millions of fans with its shows, events, and collaborations with discovering some of the biggest names in gaming, such as The Angry Video Game Nerd, Matt Pat in Game Theory, Pro Jared, Guru Larry, JonTron, Destin Ligari, and even Gerard Khalil, aka The Completionist, and more on him in a bit. Unfortunately, after the purchase of ScrewAttack by Full Screen Entertainment and then put under the auspices of RoosterTeeth, things began to fall apart. Fortunately now, Craig is back with his new show, SideScrollers, the #1 video game and entertainment podcast on the planet. In this interview, we will dive into Craig's journey from ScrewAttack to SideScrollers, what went wrong with the original company, his insights on the evolution of gaming culture, the gaming journalisms, and his vision for the future of game content online. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with Stuttering Craig.
What a nice intro. Thank you for that.
Thank you. No, I wanted to make sure I had it all tight and ready to go because I was excited to speak with you. You know, I'm just at the right age when I was a young adult, starting to enter college. That was when ScrewAttack blew up. And I have so many fond memories, between 2006, 2009 of, going to the website, downloading the podcast, and, watching it. I'm on like a little iPod Touch,
right.
Big. Really enjoyed it back in the day. And I followed it as it kept going, and then it just kind of disappeared, which was sad. But that happened to a lot of people during that period. A lot of the early creators that were in the 2000s, something happened, and then we lost them to this current age we're living in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was... for us, it was... I would say ScrewAttack left with a whimper after I left the company. And it was it was kind of foreseen, it was one of those things where it's like, would I love to see the brand still around? No, because it had departed so much from what I was doing. And the reality of, of it being rebranded, which I'm sure we'll get into to Death Battle, was something that anybody who was looking at it could have seen from a mile away. It was going to happen. I mean, everybody, like I left the company, I was like, well, that's the end of that, which, sucks. But at the same time, I was fully okay with it. So.
Yeah, when you started ScrewAttack and it became big, you were a pretty young guy. I think I read up you had recently graduated with a degree of journalism from the University of North Texas. You had played as a slam ball star, which I don't even really know what that is exactly. It's is that the basketball spinoff where they do all the dunks? The one with the trampoline was that.
Yes, it's basketball with trampolines. They actually brought it back this year. They tried to reboot it over on ESPN. But yeah, I did it 20 years ago, and I wouldn't consider myself a star in it by any means. But it was, when there's only 64 players that are playing it. I mean, I guess technically. But yeah, it was a really fun experience. Finished up school in 2005, and had this degree in journalism. Didn't really know. I wanted to do something in journalism, some like specifically sports journalism. I wanted to do play-by-play, or basketball, football, whatever. And I came to the realization that wasn't going to happen pretty quick unless I knew somebody, and unless I could get some sort of internship at a major major league or major NBA or something along those lines, and just work underneath a major person, because that business is all about relationships. So I was like, well, I can try to get like some minor league job and call AA baseball games in, Lincoln, Nebraska or whatever, and hope somebody dies and eventually move up the list. But that's not really how it works either. So that's where the idea of talking about video games kind of came into play, because I'd always been a big video game guy. Love video games. And like most people, they have their dark period where they kind of step away from games for a little bit to focus on other things. I did that a lot. In college, games were more of like on the periphery for me. I was doing all sorts of other things in college, slam ball and, working at Disney and just trying to figure out how to get through school. Because I didn't live on campus. I was a commuter, and at the time, my connection to games was really through Tom, TJ, who started ScrewAttack with, and he's the one who kept me connected to games. And but the idea of starting a website or a podcast in particular about video games, and it was actually our thought was start a radio show about video games, and that eventually became podcasting. And this is like so before podcasts were a thing. This is so, everybody has a podcast now. And
Apple has like a section for it on its shop, but that's about it.
Right. And this is at the time where, we didn't even know it was called podcasting. It was just, I think our early SideScrollers was called SideScrollers Radio, because we were trying to emulate radio as best we possibly could. But yeah, we started ScrewAttack, and we found a really great niche for us after about 9 months of just trying to figure out what we were doing. It's very similar to SideScrollers today, in that it takes a while to figure out kind of what you're doing. And specifically back then, there was no monetization structure at all to making a living online. So we were essentially doing this for free, figuring out what it is we were doing. And I was more or less sending emails to bigger companies trying to figure out if they would actually pay us or if they wanted to work together to make videos for them. Because we knew we started to make videos, did this little video game vault series, and eventually we got a bite. Like I said, I spent pretty much all day sending cold emails, and eventually got a bite. And that was kind of the first push of the snowball down the hill, which allowed us to really gain momentum and allowed us the opportunity to make a living doing what we were doing, which was like crazy to us that we were able to do that. So it was cool. It was fun to figure it out.
Yeah, the internet was in a completely different place for our younger viewers. Almost all the infrastructure we have now, whether you think it's YouTube or how people get paid, how it's set up, you have an ad network, or you have sponsorships, or you have a subscriber system. None of that existed in 2006. Yet, this, to give you an idea about how big ScrewAttack was back in the day, just in its early period, so the first 3 years, 2006, 2009, you guys had over 245 million downloads, which is insane, because it's not YouTube where you accidentally bump into a video. You actually have to go out, like really out of your way, go to the site, download the file. Internet's much slower. That takes all the time. Then you have to put it on your favorite device and then watch it. So to consider that many people were checking out your content before streaming is ever a thing, that's just, that blows my mind. It's such an accomplishment.
It was, if you put that into today, I mean, if you were to have that today, 245, a YouTube channel that is 245 million views over the course of a couple of years, that is a massive YouTube channel. And this was all done, directly through websites. YouTube was a place where you found cat videos and dudes getting hit in the nuts. Like that's what YouTube was when we started. And there was no monetization structure. And really the big partnership that we had that really exposed us to a lot of people was we worked with a company called Game Trailers. And Game Trailers was owned through MTV. And that's where you went to go find game trailers. That was the whole idea behind it, trailers for video games. And we were the first real third party they worked with to create new original content. And there was a thirst for it. And we hit, and what we were doing, we did top 10s in this like retro game series called the Video Game Vault, as well as brought the Angry Video Game Nerd over. And that was just like such a wonderful recipe for success. I mean, those Video Game Vault videos, on average, they were doing 300,000 views. And the top 10s were doing millions of views. And James's videos were doing millions of views as well. And like, once again, this is 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, drastically different time where, we saw success because for a number of reasons. I think what we were doing was drastically different, and there weren't many people doing what we were doing. It was considerably harder to make content back then than it is today. Now you just set up your phone. You can do everything on your phone without having a nice camera. You know, your phone has editing equipment. It has audio, video. You can live stream from it. It's all right there. And then there's such a manual process. You had to record things on tape. You had to bring it over, import it to a device, then bring it into editing equipment, which wasn't available as readily as it is now. Now there's free editing software, but you had to have Final Cut or some sort of program like that, which was expensive. And there were a lot of barriers to entry before you get into content creation. And we were able to, you know, you look back at the content, it's not like it was like great content. I mean, it was fun. It had a lot of personality, and there were a lot of funny like one-liners and stuff. And I think those kind of hold up, but the quality of it was so poor compared to what the content that's created today, just from a visual perspective. And, you know, we're talking like 240p compared to, you know, this interview is probably going to be 1080p or 720, or definitely a high definition. So it was, to put that in perspective, the video quality we were using was, you know, probably like this size, you know, compared to this video. So infinitely smaller. And when you look back on it, it's all blurry and gross and nasty. But once again, product of its time, for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the unfair criticisms projects from that era get. Like they say, oh, look at all these terrible, all this cringy, negative humor. You know, all those terrible people. What were they thinking? You know, but that was back then. That was definitely the time. You could make jokes that were, you know, more adult in nature, or making fun of people for certain things that you just. If you said them now on YouTube, there's a good chance you get, you know, a strike or taken down.
Yeah, and you know what? I won't apologize for that. Yeah, things were said, and we did things that, you know, today is inappropriate. Like, fuck off. You know, sorry if I can't curse, but like people want to get on their high horse. You see this all the time on the internet, where people want to get on their high horse and talk about, oh, we can't say this, you can't do this. Yeah, you can do whatever you want, right? And the idea of this, you know, gamer culture and how it's shifted over the years, it's really silly. Really, the only thing that's shifted is people are scared to say what they actually feel, and that's the main shift, because people are scared. So, and that's one thing I've never been scared of people or actions, or and I think that's one of the things that made ScrewAttack work, and I think that's one of the things that makes SideScrollers work, is when you look back on the parallels between what we did then and what we're doing now, it's all the same. ScrewAttack was counterculture to what the gaming space was then. Gaming space then was buttoned up. It was suits and ties. It was really polished. You know, IGN was this you know, this mega corporate thing owned by Fox at the time. Even game trailers, like in my conversations with game trailers and their GM at the time, he was like, we love you guys because you can say things that we can't say. And that's why ScrewAttack worked, because we would say things that that even the people that were paying us couldn't say. And we're doing the same thing today with SideScrollers. SideScrollers today is the counterculture to what gaming is. Gaming today is scared and frigid, and SideScrollers is strong, and we say with our chest out, and we're not scared to say things that everyone else is thinking. So there's definitely, you know, my whole strategy after we figured out what ScrewAttack was and what SideScrollers was you know, just be honest. Be honest. That's the biggest thing. So
that is hard though for some people, to be honest, especially these days. It feels like whether it's journalism or video content creation, so much of it is very performative. That is that kind of expectation that you should say or do whatever might make the audience or your advertisers happy, versus it's like back in the day, you guys were like, oh, we have this kind of odd idea for a video, you know, let's just do it now. Let's try it out. Let's see what happens. And, you know,
right.
Even if it's a little bit cringe, you know, we'll find out if it works or not. And if it works, we'll keep doing it. If not, we'll try something else.
Right. So there's this video in particular that I go back to that people at ScrewAttack were like, please don't, like, I've done some reaction stuff to old ScrewAttack videos, and people were like, please don't react to that video. And I'm like, so this video was it was an old Japanese game show, right? And the idea was you had this Chad was acting like a Japanese game show host. So he's like all over the place speaking in broken English, right? And he's like, they're like, please don't show this. It's so bad. It's like, it's not bad. The funny thing about that is that you have this white guy who is so like, it's funny that it's so bad. That's what's funny about it. Like, we're not going for authenticity at any moment. The fact that it's such a parody is what makes it funny. And that's amazing that like people would be so gun shy to want to show off that video today. And it's so silly to me, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Your show is just so influential even still in ways I don't think a lot of people, I mean, if they like ScrewAttack, they probably know, but maybe the younger viewers do not. It's like MatPat and Game Theory, Pro Jared. I mean, there's so many people. Gerard Khalil, the completionist, who is now in a world of hurt. Like, there's so many people that you either discovered or worked with or brought to the attention that are now superstars in different ways. Some of those people, I would say, MatPat at Game Theory, they are those kind of people that are kind of like today's suits and ties when it comes to video game creation content.
Yeah, we definitely had, when you look at like the video game space and you play the old Kevin Bacon game, the 6 degrees of separation, whatever, I mean, we're 1 or 2 degrees away from everybody. We either worked with somebody directly or they worked with somebody, like we're right there. And I think that goes to say with the amount of talent that there was back then that has continued to evolve today. And, Matt's obviously like gone on to see tremendous success. He was YouTube's golden boy for a long time, still is. And he's obviously like extremely wealthy now, mainly because, he sold his company. I think it's spectacular. When that happened, I sent him a message and said, hey man, if you need any guidance through this process, please let me know. I've been through it, and I couldn't be happier for him. You're right. There was a lot of people that came literally through our community that have gone on to do some spectacular things and become really mainstays. The gaming historian is started on ScrewAttack. JonTron, like go down the list of these people who have gone on into, they have millions of subscribers, and it's really, really cool to see that. I mean, and it goes back to, all we did was just provide a little platform back in the day. They did it with their hard work, with their work ethic. But I would like to think that what we did was provide them with a little bit of hope, because we used our platform for people and to give them exposure. And that was just kind of our way of paying it forward. And they've obviously done the rest themselves. And I think that's awesome. I'm super proud of everybody who has gone on to make a career of doing what they love.
Yeah, there's a certain value in legacy, or seeing that you put your name into the rock surface and to see it still standing today. I think that is something that anyone that's interested in content creation or having if they love something and they want to make a difference, having that kind of impact is really special. To give some other people, I mean, ScrewAttack was huge. You guys had a convention at one point for like 5 or 6 years. You had SGC. You guys developed some video games. I think you did a collaboration or two with the Escapist. Just you had so many huge things. Yet I was listening to one of the interviews you did, and you were saying at Game Trailers, you're in charge of this company, ScrewAttack, which is one of their highest performers. And one of the reasons, and we'll get into why the company got sold, but you were only making like $35,000 a year, even though your videos were hitting in the millions.
Right. Yeah, we were killing it, but there was no money in content creation at the time. So yeah, like for the better part of my entire time at ScrewAttack, I was making $35,000 a year. And, people look back and they said they're like really critical of, they're like, well, you paid these people, you didn't pay them a whole lot. I was like, nobody made anything at ScrewAttack. Well, I was reinvesting in people who were working. But the thing is, like, all these people have gone on to have full careers in the gaming space and the content creation space. And ScrewAttack was just like for, Angry Video Game Nerd and Completionist and JonTron and, all these people we just talked about, it was a stepping stone for people. ScrewAttack was not for a long time. It was never the intention of like a get rich thing, because it was strictly done out of passion, which I think is what people really, why it resonated with so many people. You know, you mentioned SGC, and you know, we had our final year at SGC. We had 15,000 people go through the doors at SGC, which is a major,
that's a
major event.
Wow.
And what people don't realize about SGC is that we ran SGC. This wasn't like we hire a third party to make sure, like we were at the front doors. We were at registration giving people their cards. We were the ones when there was an issue. I was the guy putting out the fires, right? This wasn't like, oh, we're going to make an appearance at our event. We were legitimately the people running it. And then on top of that, like the final year, SGC cost $250,000 to do the final year, $250,000 a year. And we pretty much broke even. SGC never made money. Live events specifically, once again, this is just a time where, you know, sponsorships were a thing, but you know, we sponsor our gaming event, you know, and we never really had that great of relationships with like gaming publishers and such. And we didn't really want to have giant gaming booths at our event. So everything was really mom and pop. So, you know, we'd spend this exorbitant amount of money and break even. So it was more like a marketing thing. So the content's not making money. The live event's not making money. So how are you making money? How are we supposed to pay everybody, you know? But when you look back at like our team at ScrewAttack, I think at one point we had, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 people that were like on salary at ScrewAttack. And, you know, the company is making, I don't know, maybe $600,000 a year, maybe. And when you do the math on that, it's not a lot of money, and it's not a lot of profit to be put out there for you know, for people to, you know, to be banking. You know, nowadays, once again, you do that type of, you do, you know, 100 million views in a year on YouTube, you got sponsors breathing down your neck, and they're paying you, you know, 10, 15 grand, 20 grand to be a part of what you're doing. And, you know, in addition to the advertising revenue, in addition to, you know, memberships and super chats and super thanks and all those things that go along, that the wonderful monetization tools that YouTube offers. I mean, it's night and day how much easier it is to make money online nowadays. Whereas back then it was, you know, pretty much impossible. So, you know, once again, it goes back to we didn't have insurance. You know, like if somebody got hurt, it's like, you know, so there was no insurance, there was no benefits offered. The benefit was, hey, come work, have fun, let's play some games. And every once in a while, if we have an extra copy of a game, you can take it home and keep it. Like that was the benefit, you know?
No, I think especially when you're starting out and you're mostly young guys, but as the company grows and people are moving into the, you know, the next phase of life and they're having families, that kind of argument of, you know, you just make this certain amount, but you won't have benefits, you won't have health insurance. That's a hard argument to make. But I mean, you guys, you know, I think I will compare you to some of your contemporaries. Let's say the Nostalgia Critic and everything that went wrong with Channel Awesome. You know, this is back, you know, before Angry Joe was on YouTube, he was doing Channel Awesome, because it's like you said, during those early 2000s, people just didn't think you could make money doing this hardly. So they would gather up into groups or cliques. Eventually, YouTube, of course, did become so substantial in being able to pay people, so everyone shifted over. But you guys didn't have the problems that like Channel Awesome did. Channel Awesome, we found out, it was an ethical nightmare. Whereas you don't have those same kind of complaints about ScrewAttack. Even the people who left ScrewAttack are people who think they should be better for what happened, like Pro Jared. They mostly have to say, actually, no, things are pretty okay. Like we just separate because we disagree, or it didn't, you know, we weren't a good fit.
Yeah.
None of it's like, oh, you know, Stuttering Craig one day, you know, he took me and he pushed my face in the gutter, and
yeah,
I don't know what else. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is like, I've always tried to treat people with respect, right? And I honestly feel like all of them were my friends. You know, they come. I was just the guy who had to make the decisions, right? And everybody knew we had to get work done. Everybody knew what needed to be done on a day-to-day basis. And I think it kind of starts with expectations. And the expectation was get your job done and then let's have some fun. And sometimes, like I think of one series of videos we did all the time, which was the clip of the week, right? And the clip of the week was a video that went up on Saturdays. And for us, it was kind of like the reward, because it was like a skit video where we essentially just created on the fly on a Friday. We'd figure, it's today's Friday, we need to do a clip of the week, right? And because every Saturday it was going to go up. So we more or less conceptualize this entire thing and have it done ideally in a few hours, but sometimes it would go longer. And, some of the guys would have to be up a little bit later. I would say that'd probably be the biggest criticism, right? Of like, sometimes people work late, but they still got paid for their hourly, hours worked, right? But in what job don't you have to work late? For me, it was all about experiences. And did I have all the answers at ScrewAttack? No. Do I have all the answers now at SideScrollers? No, I don't. But I'm just doing the best with what I have available. And at the time, it wasn't a whole lot. The fact that we had an office and that we had chairs and a place to go. And I remember thinking it was a really big deal. Like I remember hiring, I think it was Sean Hines. And he's like, do you have like water? And I was like, you go into these, like when we got acquired by Fullscreen, I remember just the ridiculous amount of amenities that were there, the snacks and the food trucks and the water and the energy drinks and all the stuff that they had when you went to their offices. And I was like, what world is this? Because we were struggling. Like if I bought, a 24 pack of water to make it available, that was like a big deal. It's like, Craig bought us water, because once again, there wasn't any money to do anything. So it was I think that was kind of the unique and fun thing about it, was everyone was in a different time in their life. It was before, everybody really had wives and kids. It was just a bunch of like single guys and gals who were just coming to work and having fun. And you saw that in our product. And when everyone started to reach that point in their life where they started to have serious relationships, and in my case, have kids, get married, things like that. That's where things started to shift. Okay, well, we probably should offer insurance. What does that look like? How much does it cost? Oh, we can't really afford this. All right. And, kind of fast forward a little bit to the end where we were acquired by Fullscreen. There was we had this relationship with Game Trailers. It lasted for a long time. We did exceptionally well with them, and it really rose a lot, the brand awareness for ScrewAttack, and ultimately as a trickle-down effect for a lot of people, which was great. But there reached a point to where YouTube had started to take over. Game Trailers traffic had started to decline. They didn't have the budgets that they did before, but Game Trailers was like our primary income source. Like, once again, we're not a partner with YouTube at this point. We're not, we're making pennies every month from YouTube. So our primary revenue line was creating content for other people. So Game Trailers came to us when one of our contracts expired, and they're like, look, we're going to offer you a deal. It was a 5-year deal worth $250,000 a year. It was a $1.25 million contract for 5 years. And on the surface, you're like, wow, they're offering you $1 million. That's outstanding, right? But if you do the math on that, you're getting $250,000 a year for 5 years. And the amount of people that we had working there, it's like, well, I remember being very transparent with everybody. And we went to Wendy's one day. We went to Wendy's and all got our burgers and stuff. And I laid it out. I was like, hey guys, listen, we got this offer on the table with Game Trailers, and everybody can do their job and have fun for the next 5 years, right? But nobody's really going to get any raises. We're not going to we're not going to be able to do any big events. It's pretty much, we know what our income's going to be, and it's going to be fun. Or, and this is like the first time it was really discussed, we can kind of go all in, try to grow and sell. And unanimously, everyone's like, let's go all in and let's try to sell. And that was kind of the first time we really thought about that. And that goes back to the idea of like, we couldn't afford insurance, so let's do what's best for these people. That was my thought, was let's do what's best for everybody here. Let's give them the opportunity to make a decent wage. Let's give them the opportunity to have insurance. And that was like my promise was like, I'm going to do my best to get you guys fair wages and bonuses and all that stuff. And I feel like I did a good job of that ultimately. Fullscreen came through and they were interested in acquiring us. We talked for like 6 months. Eventually the acquisition went through, but not without like a ton of negotiation and hassle. And one of the biggest sticking points on that was getting everybody that worked for me stock in Fullscreen. And that stock would prove to be incredibly valuable later down the line as that stock, it was like $10,000 in stock in Fullscreen, or 10,000 shares or whatever it was in stock in Fullscreen. And that, for everybody who worked for me, they all got that. And that stock later came out to over I think it was close to $100,000 in a bonus later on down the line when Fullscreen was sold to AT&T. So that was my promise to them. And I feel like I always tried to do what was best for the team. That's kind of how I was raised in sports and everything else. Do what's best for the team. And while, you may be the captain, you still do what's best. And that was my thought process. That's always been my thought process, and that will always be my thought process. So, I like to think that I allowed people an opportunity to use ScrewAttack into a better springboard. So.
No, and it makes sense. I mean, you were trying to do the right thing. You obviously had tried all kinds of ways to diversify your income. Like, you ran a little video game store for a little while. I mean, you were trying all kinds of things to try to figure out a way to make it work. So, and look, you had no idea that Fullscreen, when after they bought you, they would make the mistake of putting you under RoosterTeeth, which you could tell me if I'm wrong, but that kind of broke how the mechanisms in your company work, because the big advantage you guys had was the fast turnaround time. Oh, I have this idea. I want to try it. Okay, go do it. Instead, you were like, okay, Paul has this idea. I have to get on my computer. I had to write a few emails. Hello, guy at RoosterTeeth. My intern, Paul, he wants to try a video or Princess Peach. And it's like, is it okay? I'm like, I don't know if you like it. Maybe, it's all that extra time, all that lag time that you now have that you didn't. And that makes all the difference in the world.
It really stifled creativity in a major way. And that was one of the things that was really fun about ScrewAttack was, you have an idea, do it. But what we found when we got involved with RoosterTeeth was they had a check system where you had to get, I think it was like 5 or 6 checks from various people before something could get green light into a series. And that process could take weeks to do. Right. So let's just say, I want to do an upcoming series about this game or whatever. Well, the game comes out in 3 weeks. Usually I'd say, okay, well, do it, make it happen. But by the time that game was done or was out, the check process would have, would still be in play. I think back to, it's really crazy to think about this, but we did a video with Achievement Hunter where we played this game called Amazing Frog. And Amazing Frog was this stupid little indie game. It was on the Ouya at the time, which nobody remembers the Ouya, but it was like this crowdfunded little console built on Android. Anyways, Amazing Frog was this game, and we had an awesome time. The video did great on the Let's Play channel. It was great it was fun. And we had this great little meme that came out of it where we called the pig in it Dave Bacon, right? So I think Michael from Achievement Hunter was like, it's Dave Bacon. It's Dave Bacon. And we came back, we did another video, and the thought was like, well, let's do a t-shirt about that, right? Mm-hmm. So in ScrewAttack, that would have taken about 3 days, right? We're gonna come up with a concept, we're gonna get it going, and honestly, the t-shirt would probably line up with the release of the video, right? But at RoosterTeeth, the video was released, and the t-shirt wasn't released until 7 months after the video was released. So nobody had any idea what Dave Bacon was. It had come and gone. So the t-shirt sells a dozen shirts, and as opposed to 50, 100, whatever. And they're like, well, how come your stuff's not performing? It's like, well, how come it takes so fucking long to go through this entire process? And once again, the people signing off on this, they don't know your brand. They don't know your audience. They don't know, they don't have intimate, like when you have an audience, when you have a brand, you have an intimate relationship with them. They have an intimate relationship with you. So having to get sign-offs from people who have no idea anything about your brand is just infuriating. I mean, I've said it before. The 3 years I spent with RoosterTeeth were the worst 3 years of my life professionally. It's not that they weren't nice people. They were great, but they had no idea who we were. We were lumped in with them after Fullscreen just kind of put us in with them, and it was like pulling teeth to get anything done. And that's ultimately like what led me to leave ScrewAttack and then ultimately start GameAttack. And even starting GameAttack was the worst thing ever. The process of that was horrible because whatever, it is what it is. But it was a lot, man. That 3 years was very trying. There were times where it took like all the joy out of everything that I was doing. And when I left, I was very happy, very content.
Yeah, you kind of got the raw stick doing research for this, that there is this popular notion online. I was asking some friends, hey, what do you think of, I'm going to have Stuttering Craig on, what do you think of him? And people seem to largely, and I think unfairly blame you for what happened with ScrewAttack. Oh, Craig, he messed things up. He scared Tom off. Oh, he saw this mistake to sell to RoosterTeeth. Oh, Craig, he's horrible, etc. But it's like, in the context of the time, how would someone else have made different decisions? I mean, they aren't going to be fortune tellers. They aren't going to know that, that they're going to make this terrible mistake. And your company wasn't the only one. A lot of these early internet video pioneers, Machinima was another one. That thing was huge and it had huge success. It had tons of little brands. Also ends up getting eaten up by company, goes up, gets a little corporation gets eaten up by a little bigger corporation up the chain. And then all that content is basically lost media today. You guys weren't the only ones this happened to.
Yeah. Well, to be clear, selling to Fullscreen was not a bad decision. I would do it 100 out of 100 times because ultimately the people who worked for me are the ones who benefited from it, right? And that was the whole idea of selling. And as far as Tom goes, that was a really big controversy, like in 2008, right? Where I fired Tom. And people were like really upset. Like if that happened during the age of social media and Twitter, people people still today are like, you were an asshole, you fired Tom. Had that not happened, ScrewAttack never would have lasted 6 months, right? We never would have had an opportunity to grow and do SGC and get to the point because there were such conflicting ideas of what ScrewAttack was supposed to be. So it wouldn't have lasted 6 months at all. And I have no regrets about that at all. Would I like to sync up with Tom at some point? Sure. But he's I have no idea who that guy is right now, right? It's been 15 years since we spoke or had any sort of real conversation. He's got wife and kids that I've never met. I have kids he's never met, that are almost teenagers. So it's it is what it is. We're at this point, we're just people that we used to know, right? So, and the idea of selling to Fullscreen and working with RoosterTeeth, I said I have zero regrets about that. The only way that I can see myself as as killing ScrewAttack was me leaving it, because when I left ScrewAttack, kind of the direction of it went away, and making those decisions that need to be made. And it was a slow decline. The reason why I left ScrewAttack primarily was I reached a point to where I felt we had reached a point with ScrewAttack to where we were going to be fine no matter what. We had reached a point to where every year, every month on YouTube, we're going to have 20 million views. Every month on YouTube, we're going to make X amount of money and it's going to be good enough, right? And one of the biggest things was I felt like when I lost a personal relationship with the audience to the point where when we said, hey, we have a t-shirt coming out. Hey, we have this event coming out. I would say it. And then in return, people would say, hey, who's going to win in a fight between Superman and Goku? Right. And that was kind of the response. So our audience had grown dramatically, but that relationship had gone away. Which happens at times. So that's why I left. And that was the whole idea of starting over with GameAttack was to reestablish that relationship, that community that made ScrewAttack so special.
people treat other people differently than how they would like to be treated. That isn't a surprise to anyone that's ever met a human. Because, like, people, especially public figures, they only really care about what was your last greatest thing. And if you can't continue to put exactly that same type of output, oh, this guy's now a loser. It's like, oh, he was so, it doesn't matter that you were an early internet pioneer. You get, almost 300 million people to download your little dinky podcast. You get billions in YouTube in video views across your different platforms. It's like none of that matters. Now he's just a loser because, he hasn't done something really big, in the last, and then you can determine the number of years.
How do they know? How do they know what I have and haven't been doing? Like what I do online is only the public facing side of it, right? Like I have other businesses that they have no idea what, like I spent a year outside of the video game industry as an executive for a firearms company. And like, that was a really like rewarding experience. And, like, will SideScrollers see the success of ScrewAttack? No, it's like that was lightning in a bottle, but it's different than it was back then, right? Like it was like, I will take 60,000 subscribers of people who come and join SideScrollers on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 11 a.m. Central Time. We have 2,000 people, 2,500 people watching a show that's 9 months old, right? That 2,000 people who are joining us, that puts us in the top 0.5% of live streams on the internet, right? How many brands in the first 9 months become the top 99.5% of whatever it is that they're doing? So where are we in 9 months from now? So to say I'm not successful, I mean, with all due respect, go off.
No, and I wasn't speaking for myself. It's just
no, I'm not saying you. I'm saying just in general those people. So
yeah, that's a very common presumption I think people have online. People will think what they want to think. It's interesting.
Well, I don't watch them, so they must not be good, right? That's the thought.
Yep.
I don't know who they are, but there's people on YouTube that have tens of millions of subscribers that I've never heard of that are killing it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But because I don't watch them, does that mean they're not good? No, it means that tens of millions of people see value in what they're doing. But just because I don't watch them doesn't mean they're not any good. It just means that I don't enjoy their content.
It's interesting. I feel like since you started and we've been through the stage where it was like you said, when you started, gaming press was very tightened up. They were wearing shirts and ties. They weren't necessarily funny. They were a bit holier than thou. We're kind of back at that point now. And even we're seeing people like the completionist, who I've mentioned twice in this interview, where, my friend Vito, he calls it, the good guy California. It's this attitude about you have to put this out forward, this really aggressive, I'm the super nicest guy, I'm the nicest guy in the room kind of mentality. And then underneath it, they're a grumpy fraud. It's so interesting how we've gone from where you were in 2006, where we're kind of in the same place now, where people in journalism are like, is this going to survive? Obviously, IGN will, but will Kotaku, Polygon, are those still going to survive? And there's a big asterisk next to that.
No, I think, we'll see RoosterTeeth fall, Kotaku will go, Polygon will go, because ultimately everything that these companies are doing, specifically, your news sites, can be done on Twitter, can be done on X. Like why do you go to these platforms? You can get it in a headline on Twitter, on these social media platforms. And they're not profitable. You will continue to see these companies go under because they're outdated. They're no longer viable. So, but yeah, back to what you're saying. Yeah, there was now more than ever, authenticity is paramount, right? And you see this with these nice guys, where it's always like, hey, smiling, here we are. We're having a great day, and how they're in our jolly little fake world. And that's perpetuated by social media. Everyone's got their phones out saying, look at how great my life is. Here I am on the beach, blah, 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 blah. But really what draws people in is just the authenticity of the whole thing. And, like I would say the one thing that people go, oh, Craig, you've changed. It's like, no, I haven't. I haven't changed at all. I still have the same beliefs as I did when ScrewAttack had there. And you asked me then, I'd say the same thing now. I've always felt that you should talk to all sides. I've always felt that you should give people respect when they deserve respect. And that's something when you look at side scrollers, that's been a continuous thing. Right? I will speak to anybody, I will have good conversations, bad conversations, hard conversations, easy conversations. And that's how it's been literally since day one. And I'll make fun of people when they're doing stupid things. Like, what's the fun of making content if you can't laugh at dumb things?
Exactly. Yeah.
I love laughing at things. Like, why can't we just laugh at dumb things?
Yeah, it's so interesting. The news around gaming video or gaming journalists, so interesting. Which I mentioned the completionist. We've also now had this huge leak from Insomniac, and yesterday, and you talked about this on your show on SideScrollers even today. There's this attitude like if you cover the leaks at all, that's going against journalism ethics. If you even talk about what every single person is talking about online, somehow if you talk about it, you're not only pushing forward something negative, you're condoning piracy, which is just absolutely silly. Because if the gaming journalism proper are acting like this, but if I go to the Washington Post, if I go to a little local TV outlet, everyone's talking about it. They don't care. So what's wrong with gaming culture, at least the professionals who are the gatekeepers of gaming culture today, versus where the audience is? Because you are still so tapped into the audience, which is really excellent to see.
Here is the reason why those outlets won't last, is because they try to be they think they're the gatekeeper, but they're not the gatekeepers. That's the reality. That's the secret to this whole thing. The secret is that the YouTubers who are talking about this, like, there's far more of them than there are of the Naomi Kyles and the kind of funnies and these people who are saying, oh, you definitely shouldn't talk about this. It's a disrespect. And like I said, I've known Greg for a long time, specifically at Kind of Funny, right? I haven't talked to him in a long time, but Greg's always been like nothing but nice to me, right? And I've always repaid it. We've had many good conversations, but that doesn't mean I can't disagree with him on this, right? That doesn't mean we need to be one-to-one lockstep in every single thing ever. Do I think that it's stupid and elitist to be like, no, we shouldn't talk about? No, that's dumb. Just like any other hobby, gamers are going to want to hear about the news that's coming out. So to say we're not going to talk about this out of respect for, no, get off your high horse, take the stick at your ass, and realize that if the average person is interested in rumors, that's how it is. That's how it is, especially leaks, when they can see the next 6-7 years of whatever the studio is going to produce. I think that's fascinating, and it should be talked about. Now, I do think there's a line that you shouldn't be talking about people's personal information. I think most people can agree on that. As far as the other stuff that came from that
you don't
leaks.
want to be leaking someone's social security
right.
code.
Of course not.
It's okay to talk about the new Wolverine game.
Right, of course. So it's almost tone deaf, really. And I think that comes from, it comes from the surroundings that you're and you want to maintain those relationships, man. Hey, I want to make sure I have my good buddies at the gaming company aren't upset at me for talking about it. Here's the reality. If your buddies are that good, if you're that good with your buddies, they'll understand you talking about it. They're going to be honest with you, and you're going to be honest with them. You're not going to try to fluff the relationship. Like, if you're that good of buddies, then they'll understand.
You made a comment near the start of this interview where you were saying that you realized quickly that if you wanted to get into sports journalism, you realized that it was not a meritocracy. It was based on who you know. That's where journalism is right now. Most people who are just trying to get there on merit, they've either fallen out or they've been pushed out, which I can speak for myself on that. It's fascinating.
Why were you pushed out? Were you pushed out?
Yeah, to some degree. Not so much mainstream on the conservative side, but it really is this way, unfortunately. Journalism.
Wait. You were pushed. You said the conservatives pushed you out?
Yeah. Back in the day, I mean, I'm a freelancer, but I was moonlighting as a writer for Post Millennial, and then they decided they were going to go heavy on anti-COVID stuff, and they felt like I wasn't part of the team, so I gotta.
Well, and that's where I have a problem with this. People go, oh, Craig, you're so right wing. I'm not right wing. I'm right in the center, because here's the thing. I think that if you're going so heavy into the anti-COVID stuff or the pro-COVID stuff, which is, whatever, either way is bad. Both are bad. Like, the idea of journalism is that you see things right down the middle. That's the whole idea. That's the way it's supposed to be. Now, that's not how it actually is today, but that's the way I was taught, and that's the way it's been primarily up until the late 20th century. Now, with that said, I am not a journalist. I do not pretend to be a journalist, but I do have a journalistic background. So I have an idea of what it's supposed to be. But with that said, you talk about the idea of knowing somebody and making sure that you're in the club. That's the reality is that's most businesses, right? Very rarely do you see people who are so talented that they can't be ignored. But it always helps to know somebody. That's the rule about, life, is that it's all about relationships. It's all about relationships and who you know. So,
yeah, I mean, I guess it's on a slang scale. I think what you're doing with video, I think it's more meritocratic in the sense that, you are more based on the numbers and your ability to perform, which comes with its own benefits and negatives. But I think I prefer that world over, you have to know the right person. You have to have the right opinions. I just think that's really stodgy. And I think what you were doing with SideScrollers, what you did with ScrewAttack, I think that really is the future of content, like entertainment, but also news. I think that's where this is going. The models that they put together that the thought would be okay for the internet, based on like banner ads, et cetera, that obviously is no longer working. But the people who will still be standing at the end of the day when all the dust settles will be people like you.
I hope so. I sure hope so. I think SideScrollers is really interesting. Just doing something every day. And when you look at, the entire idea of SideScrollers was really simple. Like I told you, I spent a year outside the gaming space. I didn't look at video games at all. I was like, I'm done with it. I did this like retirement video before I left. I was like, I'm done with video games. I'm never going to talk about them again. And that was like my mindset. I was so far out of it. I didn't look at any of the video games. I had no idea that new consoles had come out. I had no idea what games were coming out. So when I stepped back in and I looked at just the batshit insanity that's happening in the gaming space, I was like, holy cow, I know that I'm not alone in the way that this is just moronic and how this is, everything that's happening in here. And that was the whole idea behind the show. And sure enough, it's been really great. Like I said, SideScrollers is built around being more than just me and whoever's on the show talking about it, right? It is an ongoing conversation that is happening in real time with the audience, real feedback. And it's needed. It's needed because there are people who are extremely passionate about this, and doing a live show is something that's done a million times. But if you're looking for a place to find, like I've said, doing a daily just gaming show is incredibly boring, right? It's very, very hard to do. But I like to think that we talk about the cultural impact of video games and some of the things that are associated with the culture of gaming and entertainment. And that's harder to do. But it's every day is an adventure with SideScrollers, and I've really enjoyed the process of kind of getting back to it and going back to like even what ScrewAttack was. ScrewAttack was something original every day. And that was one of the things that really helped us stand out. And, getting back and doing something original every day again with SideScrollers is really, really fun.
And I'm grateful you're doing it. I like that you are still making an impact. You're still working in that industry that you enjoy. I love all your I love your live streams often with Razor Fist. Razor Fist he's a fun commentarian. I don't always agree with him, but he usually holds my attention. I like the back and forth between you and him, a little bit of ice and fire. So yeah. Whenever I tune into those are always really interesting. They hold my attention well.
Every Mondays with Razor for sure. Yeah, Razor's outstanding. He's been a really great yin to the yang. And in 2024, I look forward to having him on even more, which is great. We'll be solidifying our lineup even more as we get into 2024, and we'll have some really great guests and announcements when we roll out SideScrollers Year 2, February 15th. So I've been working on this for the last month or so, and working on some good things. So
nice.
Thinking about what's next.
That's exciting. No, congratulations. Well, here as we turn off, because I know you're a busy man that has to go, where can people find your stuff online?
Yeah, obviously, you can follow us over on YouTube at youtube.com/@SideScrollers podcast. You can follow me over on Twitter or X at Stuttering Craig. Hit me up, man. We'd love for you to come join us. It's, the biggest thing with the show is we try to just pound a little bit of common sense into an insane world, the video game world. And every day's fun. Whether you agree with us or not, we hope you tune in. I don't think you're going to agree with everything that I have to say. I'm probably not going to agree with everything you have to say. But if we all agreed on everything that everybody had to say, wouldn't we live in a really boring place? And I think that's kind of the core of what we have going on. I would love to hear your thoughts on all this stuff. So I appreciate you letting me come on and chit chat with you. Is there anything else you wanted to ask me about before we go?
No, you were awesome to take the time for this. And if you ever want to collaborate again, I'm always happy to do so. And I just like this stuff. Like I said, I was one of those people who downloaded SideScrollers to my little iPod Nano with the screen like that big.
That's awesome.
So getting to interact with you is great. I appreciate that.
Well, pleasure's mine, and thanks for everything, and hopefully you see continued growth, which I'm sure you will. And I appreciate you lighting this up. And once again, I'm sorry it took so long for it to happen.
Yeah, no problem at all. Well, guys, we're going to wrap this up here. Thank you again to all our viewers and listeners for taking the time to check out CULTURESCAPE. This show is sponsored with the help of Bain Books Publishing, an imprint of Simon & Schuster. Thank you, guys. And, of course, Young Voices, a journalism advocacy organization. And none of this show would be possible without help from viewers like you. So until next time, my friends, keep geeking out.